Happy Friday, everybody. I know we have a long weekend coming up, and I'm looking forward to that. Welcome to our Pau Hana. We are recording, by the way, as you know, because there are a number of people that are very interested in this our conversations, and we'll be sharing this on our website and YouTube channel. So maybe we can just quickly go around the room, just our name, where we're calling from, and then also our organization, our affiliation. And I'll just kick it off to set the example. Oh, I see Ron has company there. Yeah, Noel Morin, I'm based in Hilo, and I'm a board member of SEH. Peter?
Peter Sternlicht, board member, SEH. I'm also in Hilo.
Mitch?
Mitch Ewan, I'm with the Hawaii Natural Energy Institute. I work from home in Kaneohe Bay.
Thanks, Mitch. Ron?
Yeah, Ron Riley, Volcano Village, state coordinator for Citizens Climate Lobby.
A good colleague. Stephen?
Yeah, I'm Stephen Havacek, the guy with 50 years of experience who fails to be under 40 years old.
Hey, Stephen. And where are you based? Where are you located?
I'm sitting in Pahoa at my home.
Thank you. Russ?
Russ Kohler, Kaneohe Bay. You can see it in the background. I'm pretty much a lifelong energy management engineer. I represent the Association of Energy Engineers for the whole state.
Thanks, Russ. Gary?
Hi, Jerry Chang, board member for SEH. I'm based in Hilo.
How about Gary?
Happy Friday, you guys. I'm Gary. I'm in Curtistown. I've been studying regenerative agriculture and how it relates to climate change for a very long time. And my place is basically my own laboratory to work on a whole bunch of different systems. And it's a lot of fun. Sorry for the geese in the background.
We can hear it. Keith?
Yeah, Keith, here in Waimea, spent 30 years in aviation engineering and have picked up the call to on resilience and sustainability, particularly interested in energy and food production.
Thanks, Keith. Dia, we're just doing quick introductions, name, location, and affiliation.
Sorry for being late.
No worries.
Hope you can hear me well. So, aloha,
Yes.
everyone. I'm Diana from Big Island, South Kona, Captain Cook, and I'm a sustainability consultant with a background in architecture. And since it involves all different areas, I'm very, very interested in energy-related topics as well. So I'm really looking forward to today's presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Dia. So, I just we have a guest here. I'd like to ask.
Yeah.
How do you pronounce your name?
Oh, Dunn.
Dunn.
You pronounce my name Dunn like as in finished. Unless you happen to be Chinese,
Dunn.
then you can. I'll send you the character. But yeah.
Okay, Don. Thanks very much for joining us. How about your intro?
Well, I live in Honolulu downtown near Chinatown, and I have a broad science background. I mean, I didn't ever work in energy or anything. I got much more interested during the COVID pandemic, and then started reading up on although I had heard about collapse happening, 30 years ago, that was already too late. So I'm wearing this, I got in contact with Ugo Bardi in Florence, but my background, my undergraduate degree is in physics, and then I have a master's in biophysics from Johns Hopkins, and then a master's in electrical engineering from the University of Vermont. And then I worked at Bell Labs, and then I moved to Hawaii in 1984, and I started my own business, and I got some grants on the Small Business Innovation Research Program. I mean, they thought maybe I could bring high tech to Hawaii, but it's kind of part when there's not very much infrastructure here, and I'm just a kind of a nerdy person, especially back then,
Thank-
but
Thanks, Don.
yeah.
One thing
Okay.
I wanted to mention that Dunn had mentioned about a guy named Ugo Bardi is he's a member of the Club of Rome. And the Club of Rome was the original sponsor for the Limits to Growth study at MIT in 1972. I met Dunn and Gary through Simon, who most of you know we're working on a Hawaii energy report for. So little connective tissue there.
Excellent, excellent. Well, while I'm sending this to Peter, do you want to just quickly explain SEH, the organization, our role, what our mission is? While I
Sure, yeah. SEH was founded about 3.5 years ago, just before the pandemic hit. And the original goal was to advocate for as much renewable energy as we could, with a focus on geothermal. And there's Sydney now.
Yeah, no, I guess the last thing is, this is an opportunity for us to have engaging and respectful discussion, and also an opportunity for thinkers and tinkerers to share knowledge and make connections, right? So hopefully, as a result of this, there'll be connections that occur, and hopefully that will create some synergy and some of the things we need to accomplish. Sydney, we're just doing quick intros, and then we'll start Peter's presentation. Do you want to just do a quick where are you located and your affiliation?
Yeah, I'm on Oahu. I'm affiliated with Ho'oulu Holdings here on Oahu, and we're part of the H2 hub that was recently applied to with the Department of Energy.
Great. Thank you, Sydney. So with that, I think today we don't have a speaker, but we have a special presentation, right, from Peter, one of our board members. And in the invitation, I said, he's one of our energy wonks, and I say that with with great respect. So, Peter, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I was enough of a wonk that I was so unsure of my math that I had to go to Mitch this morning, but he gave me the all clear. All right, I'm gonna share this now. And so the title for the presentation. I think the first thing that in the conversation about energy in the world is that it is the master resource. Science defines energy as the ability to do work, and everything we do, from walking to mining to everything in between, requires energy. So it's like we don't do anything without it. And I think a very important thing to understand is that there's a direct correlation between energy consumption and the economy, which is how we live. So the global GDP and energy consumption over 50 years have tracked. Somebody's got their mic on. Okay. I think that one of the quotes that I came across was from the physicist and economist Robert Ayers. And he said, the economic system is essentially a system for extracting, processing, and transforming energy as resources into energy embodied products and services. I think in addition to this statement, it's important to also mention that money, currency, is a store of energy. So I'll go on with that. So this is intended to be a conversation, really not so much a presentation. I think the inspiration for this was kind of the observation that climate change is driving what we're experiencing now as an energy transition. So the question is carbon emissions, GHG, and climate change, is that really the best metric for policy-driven action? And are there other reasons to transition our energy scheme? The conventional wisdom is that, yes, we're on track. We're going to make a difference through our current policies. We're pushing the things we're pushing in the energy transition. But I want to ask, are we really making a meaningful difference? And a lot of people say, just stop using fossil fuels. And is that even possible? And I think some of the data that we're going to get into during this presentation will clarify, at least with historical data, the feasibility of that. And then how much renewable energy is it really going to take to replace the fossil fuels we're using? Is that something we can actually achieve on a global basis? And if we think we can do that, why do we believe that? All right, so what I have here is I'm going to switch to an interactive version of this. I'm going to switch over to this. All right, and so what we have here is that's the same graph. And as you can see, as I hover over the graph, you can see that the data is changing. And this goes up from 1800 through 2022. All right. And one of the things I'm able to do also is I can take this and I can spread out. So if you look at the slider at the bottom, so there's 1950, and we're going to go to something a little bit more realistic. So I'm going to switch over to another slide, which is the same thing, but it is from the year 2000. Can everybody see that? Okay. So we have volumes of energy, oil, coal, gas, traditional biomass, hydro, all this stuff for the year 2000. And then we have the volumes for the same energy sources in the year 2022. I'm going to go back to my my presentation and go to the next slide, which is a comparison.
Sorry, Peter. Yeah. If you don't mind, maybe go back to the previous one and maybe explain what we're seeing, right? In terms of just to make, I just want to make sure everybody's clear.
Okay. Course, yeah. My apologies. Yeah. Let me go back to the interactive one. All right. So energy can be measured in a common unit. I mean, it could either be BTUs or joules. So kilowatt hours can be converted to joules or BTUs. Oil can be converted to that. So when we're comparing things here, this is being compared to electricity in this particular example. So what we're doing is we're converting the energy content of oil and coal and gas to terawatt hours so that we have a common metric for making comparisons, especially when we're looking at renewable energy, because all of the renewable energy, or most of the renewable energy we're focusing on today, is used for generating grid power. Does that help? Yeah. Are there any questions about what this is?
Well, maybe if you take away the overlay there,
yeah.
The significance, of course, right, is that despite all the progress that we've made, over the past, decade or so, it's still a fraction of the overall energy that is being produced and therefore maybe consumed, right?
Right.
This is a consumption graph. And what that is suggesting is a significant gap, right? And a significant challenge, if I may. If we also overlay this with emissions, right? The CO2, atmospheric CO2 emissions, we haven't, it's not dipping. It just continues to rise, right?
I think if I go, when I get to this next slide, this one, I think Dia has a question. Yes, Dia?
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to ask it. I think it's in relation, like there is a bigger drop in 2020 fossil fuels. And can you share something like what caused it? Is it due to some?
It's due to COVID.
Or COVID?
Yeah, so everybody was staying home, and it was, I mean, during COVID, oil production got to the point where oil producers, and we can get into that at another time, but oil producers were actually paying whoever they could find $36 a barrel to take the oil. So oil was not trading at $80 or $90 a barrel. It was trading at minus $36 a barrel. Because you can't just turn off oil flow.
Yeah.
So
It's really interesting because there you see kind of a tool that you might be able to use in another way to really lower these consumptions. So that's why it was really interesting, because it's a huge impact if you look at the graph
Yeah.
in such a short time.
Mm-hmm. All of this impacts the economy, and we know that during, without billions and billions and billions of dollars of stimulus, the economy was tanking. So, and that really goes back to the very first slide, which was the economy and energy consumption essentially are Siamese twins. They are connected at the hip, at the ears, or whatever, but as one goes, the other goes. And so the world we live in today, our basic quality of life is dependent on how functional, how we fit into an ongoing economy. I think in terms of what Noel was talking about in terms of emissions and the type of consumption that we had, this is a little bit of math that I did, taking the numbers from that interactive graph for 2000 and 2022, and I mapped out based on fossil fuels, no or low carbon. And the reason I'm not calling it renewables because nuclear is not really considered a renewable fuel. But what I found was that over 22 years, that the amount of oil we consumed grew by 23.2%. Coal grew by 65%. Natural gas increased by 64%, but in relation to the total terawatt hours, it was a 45% gain in energy consumption. If we look at each of the what we consider no or low carbon fuels, we see that there was a 44% gain in hydropower. Traditional biomass, and I want to specify the traditional biomass is what people use for heating and cooking. It's not like Hanuaola, here in Papakeo, where we're using biomass to generate electricity. This is strictly using traditional biomass for heating and cooking. So nuclear contracted, but we had a growth of 5,000 times in wind. We had an 11,000 times growth in the use of solar. Other renewables grew by 322%. Modern biofuels grew by 800%, but essentially the difference between 2000 and 2022 is 46%, essentially the same thing you find with fossil fuels. The thing that was really startling for me was to find the fossil fuel low carbon energy mix has not changed 1% over 22 years. The relative amount of low carbon fuel that we're using today is no different as a matter of proportion than it was 22 years ago. That leaves me going, what can we expect in terms of climate change if we continue pursuing incredible growth in what we consider renewable energy? It's a question, and I think it's not a trolling question. It's a meaningful question.
The other thing too, if I may, Peter. So on the flip side, right? Just looking at emissions, they continue to climb, right? And the fact that we continue to consume oil in so many different forms here, and if you look across the globe, it's still the go-to, right? It's not surprising. So
no,
there's the concern associated with the fact that unless we start to make a meaningful dent in emissions, we're just going to continue to get closer and closer to these tipping points that will continue the same issues that we're seeing today, maybe magnified even more. So So it's a big challenge, right? It's like, okay, there's a lot of focus on these renewables and low, no carbon, but it's, you know, it's clearly not enough. And more importantly, fossil consumption continues to grow.
But okay, along with that, what we I mean, this is what the data shows and what you're mentioning, and it's completely logical that as we double our population over the last, you know, 20 years or so, or we've increased it by X amount, we've gone from 5.5 to maybe to a little over 8 billion people, that the volume of fossil fuels we consume is going to grow, therefore emissions are going to grow proportionate with the growth in the economy, the growth in our population. So how does that get mitigated if we continue growing the head count and we continue growing the economy, which is what everybody says is the indicator of a good, solid, healthy economy?
Peter?
Yeah,
Gary has his hand up.
I was just going there. Yes.
Hey, listen, Peter, to everybody, I think this is really important. And I think you're making a point which is at the forefront of my thinking that I think needs to be questioned.
Hey, Gary, what I'd like to do, and what I'm hoping we're going to be able to do is have most of this meeting be dialogue. I haven't got that much further to go in the slide deck, and then we'll just open it up to conversation. If you could hold the thought. Good. Okay, so all right, so I'm gonna move on to the next slide, if that's okay. All right, so there's a concept, everybody's talking renewable energy, but the reality is that in order to be able to turn renewable energy into work, you have to have systems that do that transformation. The systems there are no renewable generation or storage systems. They all require fossil fuel. They require mining materials, processing, manufacturing, construction, and the distribution logistics. All of the focus right now is on grid power. The distribution logistics and certainly the mining require fossil fuels because they require portable, high energy content fuels. But at the end of the day, these systems are being manufactured and they can't be recycled because, one, we don't have a scaled recycling system, and most of the systems that we're going to use to make this energy transition haven't even been built yet. So you can't recycle something you haven't actually made. All right. So, and that is everything from oil to nuclear to solar. All of these things require fossil fuel. So there's no renewable energy systems without fossil fuel. One of the big issues, and this is something that our colleague Simon Michaud is focused on, is mining and where all the raw materials come from that we're going to need. This map shows where the production, so this means processing, not just the mining, but the processing of the raw materials that are necessary to make these systems come from. They come from all over the world. A lot of it, but the vast majority is coming from China. I'm going to move on from this. What we're going to look at here is the share. This is from the IEA, the International Energy Agency, which is headquartered in Paris. So the main energy agencies around the world are the EIA, which is the United States Energy Information Administration, the IEA, the International Energy Agency, and then a lot of the research comes from what used to be the BP Statistical Review. But so what you're able to see here is that 40% of the global supply of copper comes from China, 58% of lithium, 35% of nickel, 65% of cobalt, and rare earth metals is almost 90%. So what you have is the rest of the world for copper is 44%. I'm not going to go through and read all of these, but essentially what we're seeing is that there is a geopolitical component to the future of our energy supplies and how we build the systems that are going to transition away from fossil fuels. And this is a big deal. This is really important. China's been very strategic about how they've pursued it. The United States was strategic about oil in the World War II area. China is, I mean, essentially raw materials are the new oil for the future. This is, I've got a couple of slides that I borrowed from our colleague at the Geological Survey of Finland, Simon Michaud. And basically what he's showing here is that we have these particular metals that are needed to make renewable technology systems. And he's calculated that this is the amount, like in order to build a single generation on a global basis, this is how many tons of copper will be required based on current technology, the way we're doing it, the way we're building systems now. What he's found is that like if you go to the USGS, the United States Geological Service, and you look to see what are the reported global reserves of copper, it's only 18% of what we need. I can go through each of these, but what you can see over here in the percentage area is the amount of these elements that are reported reserves that could be mined, could be extracted, and what percentage of the total renewable energy. Essentially, we're trying to electrify the global economy. So to electrify the global economy, we need this much of certain metals, and we've only got this much. This information at the bottom here is really significant. So for every 1,000 deposits of a particular element that are discovered, 1 or 2 become mines. And it takes 20 years to go from discovery to a functioning mine. And that for every 10 producing mines, 2 or 3 will lose money and shut down. So it's all based on economics. This slide, I'm not going to go through this, but essentially what it's showing is that if we look at the global production of each of these elements in 2019, this was what was produced worldwide for aluminum, copper, zinc, magnesium, et cetera, et cetera. At that rate, how many years would it take to mine what we need, which came from that last slide? So it would take almost 200 years to mine the copper we need. It would take 10,000 years to mine the lithium. This all just kind of cascades on top of the energy growth, the fossil fuel use, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to move on to the next slide so we can have some time to talk. Energy transitions take a long time. I'm going to want to get us into the conversation part, but they've tended to be slow, gradual, and it took well over 100 years for coal to become a 25% portion of the energy mix. All right, so let's go to questions and discussion. So I think Gary, you had your hand up. You wanted to go. Anyhow, these are some questions that are your topics that are from the front that that might stimulate conversation.
Peter, first of all, I want to thank you so much for your great work. I think it's important that we expand the discussion and we use all of this information to really make it clear that if it's a discussion of blame, and as long as it's fossil fuels versus renewables, I don't think we're not getting to the point. And it's got to be drawing down and methods of doing that, and then really taking a deep dive and asking ourselves, how can we be better citizens and anyone not part of the solution is part of the problem. So I appreciate everything you're doing, but I mean, when I see what's going on, I think we've got to think even bigger than the way you're thinking, and asking for everybody's help in that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the questions I have is, right now, the entire planet is on a particular policy track, and they're focused on climate change and carbon emissions. And just so the question is there a realistic possibility that will mitigate climate change? And based on historical data, that's questionable. And if it's not likely that we're going to mitigate that, what do we do with the understanding that fossil fuels are being phased out, not just by policy, but also by the availability, by the scale at which they can be produced? And the most important one, or one of the most important ones, I feel, is liquid fossil fuels, transportation fuel, which none of the systems that we're looking at right now, not solar, not wind, none of that, are really targeting how we move stuff around the global economy.
Peter, I get it. I think as long as we keep this discussion and it's a discussion of blame, the fossil fuel industry is going to push back. The people in power are going to push back. I think we need to take the discussion in a different direction. That includes them.
Okay, so where I'm going with this is do we focus on the world, or do we focus on Hawaii?
I think we focus on Hawaii, but I think
it's
got to be the right story. I think we model the behavior for the rest of the world, and I think we do it quickly. We don't screw around.
I'd like to add, Gary, to your point, and also to Peter. So big push when we look at, and it all depends on the lens through which you look, and what you're reading, and what echo chamber you're in. But at the end of the day, it's not just about a shift, right, from fossil energy to non-fossil energy. I think at the end of the day, there's this need to view this whole thing as a system. And and it's already apparent that we can't just change our energy mix and continue doing what we do, continue consuming the way we consume, continue to reward and incentivize the behaviors at the corporate and government levels that have gotten us to where we're at today, right? It's all about GDP. It's all about growth. It's all about consumption. It's all about designing things to fail. It's about incentivizing purchases and so on and so forth, right? So I think there's also this other angle, which is shifting the perceptions, the value systems, so that we start to look at the world not as this open sewer, and also this infinite resource or source of resources. So I just want to throw that out, that's another angle as well. It's not just about a mode shift. It's also about a shift in that could result in us requiring less of this planet.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I mean, a way that I would put that is that you're describing a massive cultural shift, and that the stories we tell ourselves, which essentially are the foundation of our culture needs to change. So we have to not just consume less as a punishment, but we have to understand, we have to want less.
Yeah, absolutely. It shouldn't be perceived as a punishment, else it doesn't get done. Right.
I think
we need to strive for it because it's the right thing to do. It feels good, and it allows us to feel better about the future that we're leaving.
Guys, can I get in here? Yeah. This is about being sustainable. All right. You cannot look at all of Hawaii just with blinders on for the big island. You got to open up the blinders. It's about the whole state, guys.
It is.
All right. Oahu,
the whole planet.
Oahu is where the major population is. It's where the industry is. It's where all the military bases are. The reason why you see these energy increases that Peter has so elegantly shown us on these slides is because China and India have no constraints put on them. All these protocols around the world don't put one constraint on China or India. China is building coal plants faster than we put up solar systems. Okay. That is a worldwide situation. When we get to Hawaii, and I pointed this out to a few of you just the other day. I mean, mistakes have been made here in Hawaii. Why you thought you could leapfrog over natural gas, LNG, to go to a fully solar and wind market is not sustainable. And it's proven right now by shutting down that coal plant a year ago. The grid is having very difficult time maintaining sustainable grid. California is running into the same problem. And unfortunately, Hawaii has looked to California for answers for years and years and years. Right? California right now is not turning off their nuclear power plants. They're making sure that their Aliso Canyon plant is up and running and continues to run. They're now getting ready to triple their natural gas storage. I was back there working for 30 some years, and the PUC and the government was trying to shut down natural gas fossil fuels. Their grid cannot sustain it.
There's a lot of momentum. There is the legacy process by which we have derived the energy, the industrial base of energy. And I think we should, if we haven't already, we're coming to a point where we realize that wind and solar, in terms of the volume, because we measure energy in relation to time. So if you look at the efficiency factor of wind, solar, et cetera, what we really need is we need firm power. Realistically, there are only two viable sources for firm power. One is geothermal and the other is nuclear. And I mean, this is a conversation that we've had. Mitch and I have certainly had this conversation where I think that the attitude there's new technology that can be scaled with a flow rate. I mean, the amount of energy you get over a fixed amount of time that is going, I think we will see more deployed more and more and more. So I think nuclear is poised for a comeback.
Don, I'd like to hear from you, your observation and
well,
perceptions.
It's a big conundrum. I mean, the energy return on energy invested is going down. You can't keep up a complex civilization or world civilization without energy, and right now the growth has always been like about 2.3%, increase in GNP and energy at the same time. The whole monetary system is based on, interest, and, we think money is a store of value, but, the US, we have dollar hegemony, so we're just printing money, but we are not going to pay. The US is not going to pay it back. I don't think so. I mean, and then the BRICS are forming their own monetary system to challenge that right now. They're just met in, I guess, South Africa or something like that. I don't know what the results are. So it's we have, degrowth is really the only, it's going to happen just because because fossil fuels are going to run out. That's fossil fuels makes, cement and all the main things, fertilizer and steel and plastics. We need all those things, so we can't have that kind of thing going eventually into the future. So so everything has to, you have to reduce the complexity of the system. So actually, I think the global trade system, our whole shipping, I believe they say 1.5 billion people on this planet are actually involved in this transportation. I mean, the fossil fuel kind of industry, you know, in terms of transportation and, you know, not only just taking the oil out of the ground or whatever, or mining the thing, but, you know, you have to have the people manufacturing all the equipment and designing all the equipment. And, you know, so it's a very large part. So the population is the only way is one is to get it down, but it's actually the high consuming countries that have to get it down. Not, you know, that's like us or the US and which we consume the most per capita, I think, compared even we're much more than Europe even. But, you know, Uganda or Kenya or something like that, you know, Nate Hagen says that, I mean, average, I guess, Ugandan or something, you know, would make, our refrigerator consumes more than they, in 1 year, I think, than they consume in a whole lifetime, you know what I mean? And it's like, it's morally wrong for us to deprive them of, you know, they see what we're living, you know. I mean, I correspond with people in Africa and stuff like that, and they see, I mean, you know, we're just living this really rich lifestyle. It's ridiculous. I mean, Hawaii is kind of a unique situation, I think, because, well, there's a lot of, you know, wealthy people who are kind of set up, you know, like setting up camp here, right? To maybe they can sort of weather the whole storm. But, you know, James Hansen, you know, if you take his recent preprint and then you plug it into, it's a paper by Waddell or something, we've actually already, if it's business as usual, we got 10 degrees centigrade coming down the line, you know, and it may, you know, so that's going to like extinguish life, you know, just a 1 degree change in temperature centigrade. You have a fever, you know, you already notice it, you know, 1.8 Fahrenheit. So, and, you know, I don't know, you know, they say that when this El Nino, we might actually already go beyond 1.5 degrees, you know, just temporarily, but, you know, it's going to be, so it's a big conundrum, and we need all these fossil fuels to build all this infrastructure, and we only can do it for one time. And so the most complex parts of the system are going to fail first. That's what I think. And, you know, Hawaii is a, well, we're based on tourism, and tourism is kind of a high energy consuming product that we're trying to sell and stuff like that. And eventually, I think it's going to collapse. So it'd be one of the first things, you know, eating out and things like that. You know, enjoy it now, but I don't know. It seems like some people just say, if I don't eat a nice lunch or whatever, someone else is going to eat it. You see, so it's kind of a worldwide thing. We all have to, I don't know if there's some kind of singularity is going to occur where we'll all collapse all at once or something, but so far nobody seems to be doing anything, and it's even hard for me to convince anybody to, even myself, you know, I have plastics, and, you know, I have medical expenses, and, you know, I was in the hospital earlier this year in January, just 2 days, and you know, the cost was like $18,000. You know, I didn't pay, you know, insurance and Medicare, but I mean, and it's just all that has to collapse. The you know, Bartlett, you know, Albert Allen Bartlett said population is the thing, and it's really the per capita consumption, you know, of the high thing. So, you know, if you got rid of a lot of these, you know, the wealthy people, you would say that would be one thing, I guess. You know, I don't really know, but I sort of think maybe we focus on Hawaii. Maybe we can be the first movers, and at least try to take care of ourselves, and hope that, I don't know, that's kind of selfish to think that, but we're in the middle of the Pacific, so we are a little bit moderated by the ocean, and it's hard, you know, when the collapse comes, when, you know, for hordes of people, you know, they coming around to, storm your castle or whatever. On the mainland, it might be more difficult. So I don't know, all these different angles.
Well
Yeah,
done,
I mean,
thanks.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Peter.
people have been told that the way we do stuff is the right way, and people believe that. They don't, the critical thinking has not gone into really looking and going, huh? And I mean, I don't think it's selfish. I think it's a matter of survival, and I think it's a matter of, like, is it possible if we focused on Hawaii to actually do as much, if not more, for the whole planet than if we try to focus on one aspect, such as carbon emissions? And I mean, RPS 2045 is the gold standard in this state, and everything is being measured on how much renewable electricity do we have. That's a small piece of the system. We rely here in Hawaii, even more so, or as much as anywhere else, we rely on the global economy. If it doesn't come by boat, we aren't going to have it. So
I want to give
go
somebody
ahead.
else. Yeah, before we run out of time, just want to give others the opportunity to quickly comment. Russ, you sounds like you were about to say something.
Well, I was, but if you want others to say something, go right ahead. I mean, the only thing I was going to say is I listened to a very intelligent guy yesterday on the news who bought property in Montana. Okay. Montana used to be full of glaciers. This was back in the 1000s, 1200, way back. All those glaciers melted. Do you think the Indians and the Eskimos and everybody were standing around saying climate change? Yeah, they probably did say climate change because climate is always changing.
But Russell, that's exactly the point. We've destroyed the planet. We've poisoned the water. We've polluted everything. We've killed 97%.
You're going.
That's what's different.
You're
That's what's
100%.
different.
You're 100% opposite of what I'm trying to tell you.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
The climate has always been changing.
Yeah, no, this is different. This is different. It's not about climate change.
What is different? What is different?
People in the past did not get to the point where they poisoned and killed all the life with poison. We've poisoned everything. And we've killed all the multiple species. We've developed the technology to kill everything. Nobody sprayed insecticides. Nobody used artificial fertilizer. Nobody took herbicides. We've poisoned everything. 90% of the fish are gone. There's no fooling around. This is on us, and we have a very short window to work. Otherwise,
Gary,
we're all gonna die. Every last one.
One thing I'd like to mention, Russ, is that yes, climate has changed over, in the past. The rate of change has never been what it is now. And that's the issue. It's the velocity. It's not that it's changing for the first time ever. It's how fast it's changing. And I think the science makes it clear that it's, I guess the word is anthropogenic. That we're causing that. Very, very interesting. I mean, for whatever it's worth. The Sixth Extinction by Elizabeth Colbert is a great book for anybody who wants to check it out.
We have Ron Riley.
Yeah, hi. Russ and Gary.
Hello.
Ron.
Just a word. Fischer-Tropsch can produce from coal, which is what it was designed to do, but it works from biomass. It is a process that helped fuel Germany during World War I, so it's a well-established process. It produces liquid fuel.
Yep.
And I just want to remind people that this Fulcrum Energy and United Airlines in Reno, Nevada, which has the same general resources we have, except not as much water, I suppose. They produced jet fuel that burned in the United Airlines plane and flew it for 4,000 miles, just as is. but I've preached to this choir before, so I'll just shut up now, but remind you, Fisher-Tropsch is out there, it works, it's proven, and you can make liquid fuels out of it, and we won't.
Thanks, Stephen. Ron is back. And Ron, we'll end with you. We're a little over time. Go ahead.
Oh my gosh. Well, I just wanted to say sorry for my computer dropping me off, but Russ, and where is he, Gary? That was a really interesting exchange that you two had. And I think a factoid that's worth bearing in mind, the Holocene period is 10 to 12,000 years. And if you look at the Keeling curve, which is the measurements that come from Mauna Loa Atmospheric Observatory on Hawaii Island, you will be able to go back and look at a year or 10 years or 10,000 years. And what you'll see is from 10,000 years ago until today, the Holocene has been remarkably stable with very little climate change, which fostered human civilization, agriculture, and human communities. We are now in a precipitous increase in carbon dioxide, global warming, and the pollution of the planet. And I guess my question, so that's just my observation, and I give two references there, the Keeling curve. But my question, Peter, really to you is, you've made a compelling case that we don't have enough rare earths, we don't have enough copper, we don't have enough aluminum, and yet we're going to run out of fossil fuels. So at the end of the day, how do we sleep at night? You mentioned geothermal and you mentioned nuclear. Are they the two things that we have to hang our hat on? And before you answer that, let me just say, if we're going to go back to a standard of living of developing countries that are getting by on $100 a year, I don't think it's politically possible unless we compared it to Pearl Harbor and our entry into the Second World War, where GM and the big auto manufacturers were given less than 2 weeks to stop producing passenger cars. We need bullets and tanks.
Yeah.
Get to it.
Yeah.
Now, I don't see that we can have that kind of political authoritarian directives that may be well needed. And I agree with you, Don, that a collapse is likely if we don't do something good soon. So anyway, thank you.
It's one of my sure is that's where we are. We are in the middle of collapse.
Okay.
Yeah. And relative to the limits to growth, Guy Harrington did a 50-year update and reran the original program, and nothing's changed.
Right.
We have to decide how we want to live, and that's the thing. But right now, everybody, the zeitgeist is that, hey, we're taking care of this. We just need solar panels and wind turbines and batteries, and and we can, everything will just keep, and it won't. The laws and the policies are being made by the people who are on short-term profits. Hopefully we can one, get the decision makers, and two, get the general public to understand that. I mean, the information has to be made available. We're trying to do that. If we can't do that, then life is going to proceed the way it proceeds. There's nothing we can do about it.
That's a big deliverable for SEH in the coming year. So,
Yep.
Appreciate everyone's attention to it and maybe even participation in terms of getting that word out. I want to conclude our meeting because we're over time. I know we have some of us have a long weekend to start.
Can I make a quick announcement before you close?
go ahead.
Okay, Alan Booker, a well-known permaculture teacher who's done large watershed management, is coming out in early next month. He's going to be here from the 2nd to the 6th of the 7th. He's going to be staying with me. He's going to be meeting with people in the county about a large-scale environmental plan to look at the island holistically from a regenerative agriculture standpoint to sequester carbon. Hopefully Wednesday the 4th, I want to do a gathering at my farm, potluck, to talk about Apua'a systems, and please come, invite anybody. Everyone is welcome, probably the evening of the 4th Wednesday.
Gary, do you mind sending an email to me or Peter? And we'd like to share those details out with the group.
That'd be great.
Thanks very much for doing that. And the individual you shared, if he'd be interested in joining us, it might be an interesting topic for us to cover as well.
I'll see if he can join us next week.
Yeah. Speaking of next week, just real quick, we have Angelina Galativa. He's going to be our guest speaker next week. I put that in the chat. So this person is the head of the Hydrogen Hub for California, and Jerry, who's not here with us now, invited her to come and speak. So if you're interested in what's happening there, that might be an interesting conversation to listen to. And with that, I know and Ron, by the way, maybe in a future conversation you can talk about climate, that lens that you're coming through with. That might be an interesting topic as well for everybody. So
Sure.
With that, everybody, thank you so much. Don, I hope we see you again. Thank you very much for joining.
Yeah, that sounds
And,
very interesting. Yeah.
Everybody
Excellent.
have a great weekend. Appreciate you.
Thanks.
Aloha.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.